Welcome back. In a moment, we'll examine how Muslim women are breaking barriers in the business world. But first, here are some other stories to keep an eye on. The president of the Philippines has said that he personally killed suspected criminals when he was the mayor of Davao. Rodrigo Duterte said he was setting an example to the police to address the war on drugs. He ran the southern city for 2 decades, earning a reputation for cutting crime and criticism for supporting death squads. The Brazilian Senate has approved a 20-year freeze on public spending. This is part of an austerity drive amid an economic recession. The opposition said the move would cripple the education system. The announcement was followed by violent protests on the streets of the country's largest city, Sao Paulo. And America intends to limit its military support to Saudi Arabia due to concerns over civilian casualties in Riyadh's ongoing war with Yemen. Washington officials say the US will still refuel Saudi aircraft. However, they will not be moving forward with sales of some weaponry. Once upon a time, you used to hear the phrase, business, it's a man's world. Proving this wrong, there's been a recent rise in the number of female entrepreneurs, particularly from the Muslim community. Insight's Juliana Olienka explains more.
The Islamic global economy is evolving. The expansion of the Muslim middle class into Western society, driven by young Muslims asserting their values, has created a market which complements Islamic tradition and a modern aesthetic lifestyle. Modest fashion, halal food and beverages, as well as aspirational lifestyles, have all contributed to an economy that is worth an estimated $5 trillion. According to the 2015 Global Islamic Economy Report, over $1 trillion was spent globally on halal food and beverage. Revenues from halal-certified food and beverage products were estimated at almost $500 billion. Last year, $250 billion was spent on Islamic modest clothing and footwear. Revenues from modest fashion clothing purchased by Muslim women in this same year reached an estimated $44 billion. With the growing prominence in the media of Muslim women wearing hijabs and professionals asserting their rights through modest fashion clothing, there is clearly a growing market to exploit for those looking for business opportunities. Juliana Olienka, reporting for Insight.
Well, to discuss that, I'm joined by Shazia Salim, founder of I Eat Foods. Welcome to Insight.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about I Eat Foods. What was this gap in the market you saw?
Ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to enjoy the same foods that I saw my friends eating. Lasagna, shepherd's pie, sausage roll, steaks, etc. But I was always restricted to what in the supermarket to tuna mayonnaise sandwiches, cheese and onion pasties, and it really frustrated me. It was actually at university when I realised that this isn't just me being hungry, this has to be a bigger problem here. The more Muslims I spoke to, the more I realised that this isn't just me being hungry. Actually, there is a generation of Muslims who have grown up in the UK who feel inherently British and want to feel like they can partake in all sides of British life. A big part of that is food, and they haven't been able to, and that's where I was born.
So what do you offer? What range of goods can you now buy from your company?
So we do a mixture of British goods, Italian and Far Eastern as well. So the whole sort of spectrum, and there's a lot more planned for next year as well, in sale in Sainsbury's and Tesco. So very regular supermarkets. We made a purpose effort not to go into special shops. It was part of the mainstream.
It's a regular
product.
Household shop.
Absolutely.
Okay. But you have to make sure, don't you, that the sources of the ingredients are correct and prepared in the correct way?
100%. And we take our halal integrity very seriously. So all of the recipes are checked. We have halal inspectors on site every single day that we cook to make sure that it's clean all the way through. The traceability actually is one of the best that we've got in the industry, and we check all the way back through to farms, right through to the end product as to where the meat has come from, and it's halal integrity as well.
Have you had any controversy about the halal slaughter, which of course for people who are not students of that approach,
Sure.
don't feel obliged to adhere to it, they find it a bit barbaric?
I understand that there are some sort of misconceptions around halal. I think there are two fundamental issues around it. One is that people sometimes get frightened that they're being missold something. So it's not being labelled as halal and they've been given it without being told. I agree with them, to be honest. I think if something is halal, people should be told. And to be honest, that's the only way it's going to benefit the Muslim consumer anyways, if it's labelled as halal. Secondly, I think there's an issue around ethics and this misconception around that anything to do with halal is barbaric. And actually, there's a lot of bad practice in the industry in general that's not necessarily confined to just halal. And actually, one of the things that we do is we work with our suppliers to make sure that they do ethical practices all along the way. And it's a big principle of the business.
So you ticked that box. You had a success with that, but that wasn't enough. You then took yourself off to Cambodia.
Yeah, I did that as one of the things that I wanted to do before I launched the business, as part of getting out of my system, if you will, an idea that I had, which was to travel to a land that I've never been to before and do something completely different. So I went to an island in Cambodia. I bought a resort on a small island.
You bought a resort. I mean, you say it just like that. That must have been one heck of a decision to make. I mean, was it a lot of money?
It was $15,000 at the time, which was, as a 25-year-old, is a decent amount of money. But it was also something where I could definitely see a return. And what I did is I turned it into an eco-resort, actually Cambodia's first eco-resort, where we had solar panels on the roofs, we had an organic fruit farm. We really upgraded the place, and it was a great learning experience for me, being somewhere very remote, actually. The island in Cambodia, no roads, 15 people who live on the island full-time. 10 minutes to get from one side of the island to the other. So you have all of these kind of different things you have to learn, and it was a great test for my sort of entrepreneurial skills.
Well, clearly you have the magic touch. Did you have to encounter sexism along the way? Surely a woman can't be good at this.
It's funny. It does exist. I'm not saying that it doesn't. But what I found is that I have a family and an informal sort of support network that is so loud in my head that I can't hear them. They actually just become naysayers, and and that's why I do a lot of work with young girls, because it's very, very important that their support network is just as loud as my one was. Because actually, when it is, you drown out any of that noise.
What about some Muslim voices, though? Are there those who are, well, let me put a pejorative term, old-fashioned enough to think maybe this is not the right thing for a young Muslim woman to be doing?
I think anyone who knows their Islam well enough will know the role of the wife of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who was Khadija, who was a fantastic and phenomenal businesswoman, and an incredible wife and a mother, and balanced all of those things really well.
So you feel you're just following that role model?
She's my role model, and she's my inspiration, and that's why I'm here to do what I am.
Shazia Salim, thank you for being with us today.
Pleasure, thank you.
Now, we end our programme with the Insight Bite. This is a little something that we feel you should know. It can be difficult for parents to keep their children amused, but this creative play space has opened up the sphere of imagination for little ones and grown-ups. 56,000 metres of sticky tape held up by a steel frame was all put together to make this new play area. It's called Tapescape, and it was created by the American artist Eric Leonardson. His concept was first launched in 2011 in Minnesota, and he's since created the installation across the world. It took a team of volunteers 2 weeks to put it all together. Leonardson says the artwork is all about having fun and enjoying art. The sculpture will be open to the public in Brisbane, Australia, until the end of February 2017. And that's all the play from me for now. I'm Martin Stanford. That was Insight.